So it is a very important anniversary, and one looks to see China having now signed the ICCPR, that particular human rights instrument, but of course does not subject itself to any kind of scrutiny. It hasn't signed any protocol that would allow any court to measure up. It will, I think, be coming before the Human Rights Committee, but I don't have a date for that. I'm just about to visit China, so I'll be more informed when I come back about it, but obviously there is a real problem with a lot of clauses of the Universal Declaration. We have, as a world, if you like, global justice has now starting to punish mass murder and torture. So at that level, we have begun a punishment process. I don't think that the decision makers of Tiananmen will be held to account any more than the Bush lawyers will be held to account for the torture that went on at Guantanamo. I think they will probably get away, although they better beware which countries they plan to travel to for their heart conditions or their tourism. But I do think that the other area which is completely which the UN has been hopeless at are other aspects of human rights like freedom of speech and democracy. I mean, these are promised by the Universal Declaration, but the UN is, because of its state policies, has utterly failed to protect them. I mean, you can simply I'll take one case, the case of Fiji, where democracy is regularly overthrown by soldiers who, when they're finished overthrowing democracy and beating up the Indian population, go back to their UN posts. They're the UN peacekeepers one day and the overthrows of democracy the next. The British Commonwealth is a pathetic institution and does nothing, can do nothing, although it could. I think the world could restore democracy to Fiji like that by putting sanctions and stopping the Fijian airline, Air Pacific, but which might be a good idea for safety reasons as well, since it's the only airline that still has has ashtrays in the seats. But of the plane supplies. But there's Obama the other day posing with a big bottle of Fiji water. Where is the slightest interest in restoring democracy to Fiji? You certainly won't find it at the United Nations. It was H.G. Wells and his group that I see as being fairly central to the revising and reordering of and reintroducing human rights based on human dignity, not based on God like the 19th century declarations. But he was all for an organization of parliamentary peoples instead of the League of Nations. I think that there is, while I wouldn't like to see the United Nations bypassed in the main areas, I do think that there is a case for a new international organization devoted to democracy and freedom of speech.
I think we can take 2 more questions.
Yeah, you mentioned Pinochet and Margaret Thatcher, and those types of examples whereby Western democracies are able to legitimise dictators such as Pinochet at the time, such as Margaret Thatcher did because of the Falklands War and the help Britain was given. So how would you envisage an international court being able to try a Western democratically elected head of state in the current scheme of power elites?
Yeah, I see that. And there was another question. I'll just take the other question and answer the first.
My question is about the indictment against the Sudanese tyranny. And there were some people concerned that this move by the ICJ might be counterproductive because some of the NGOs were driven out of the country, and since the tyranny there's still incumbent and there's nothing basically you can do about it if he never leaves the country and stuff. So do you think this is really a prudent move, or it's only of some symbolic value?
I mean, the questions are associated because justice has its own momentum. You set up a court, and the court may end up indicting people who are your friends as well as your enemies. There's no, it seems to me, alternative. The Americans came to the Security Council, Colin Powell, on the 10th anniversary of Rwanda, and said, what's happening in Darfur is genocide. We've got to do something about it. The Security Council referred it to the International Criminal Court. The international prosecutor has no alternative but to investigate. And he investigates. He thinks it's genocide, although the court threw out those charges. But obviously it's mass murder, in which the highest echelons of the Sudanese government, he thinks, bear command responsibility. So if the Security Council wants to carry through, it's got to support the indictment of Bashir. Bashir's reaction to indictment really proves his guilt, in my view. He has, by extirpating 13 NGOs, including Oxfam and the NGOs who are actually saving lives, he shows his utter disdain for lives in Darfur. People are dying thanks to his decision to extirpate those NGOs. Now, whether that's, you treat that as a separate crime, or whether you treat it as an aggravation of his existing crime, or whether you treat it as evidence of his mens rea to kill people or to be utterly reckless as to life and death in Darfur, doesn't perhaps matter. But that's his decision, which shouldn't be blamed on the ICC. The ICC is a court that has to follow the evidence. The Security Council has the power to delay the indictment by a year. My view is that there's a simple solution that requires a lot of pressure on Bashir, but the evidence against him is the same as the evidence against Haroun, who was indicted a year before, who was his chief minister for Darfur. And of course, as soon as he was indicted, Bashir promoted him to the Minister for Humanitarian Affairs as a snub to the ICC.